Growing up in the projects during the 1970s through the 1990s meant navigating a world of contradictions. Towering concrete blocks that housed vibrant communities, danger that coexisted with deep care, and poverty that never dimmed the light of joy and resilience. This was childhood shaped by survival, creativity, and unbreakable bonds. The projects weren't just buildings, they were entire universes stacked vertically, where 10,000 people could live in 33 towers, where every floor became its own neighborhood, and where the rules of survival were learned before you learned to read. This is what life was really like: the towers, cities in the sky. Many projects were massive high-rise complexes built in the 1950s and 60s. Pruitt-Ego in St. Louis had 33 11-story towers with a library, school, and playgrounds, housing about 10,000 residents before disrepair led to demolition in the 1970s. Elevators creaked and groaned, often covered in graffiti that changed weekly. Kids raced up stairwells because waiting for the elevator meant you might be late for dinner, or worse, stuck between floors when it broke down mid-ride. The smell hit you the moment you entered the lobby: bleach mixed with cigarette smoke, urine in the corners where the janitor hadn't reached yet, and something else, something human and lived in that you couldn't quite name. Families hauled laundry baskets to communal laundry rooms on the first floor, quarters clutched tight because the machines ate them like candy. Mothers hung clothes out of windows on makeshift lines, underwear and bed sheets flapping in the wind for the whole block to see. From balconies, mothers shouted reminders that carried across courtyards. "Bring your behind upstairs. Don't make me come down there." Their voices echoed off concrete walls, bouncing between buildings until everyone knew somebody was in trouble. Children remember gazing at the skyline from upper floors. The city spread out like a postcard, sitting on metal stoops that burned your thighs in summer and froze them in winter. Hearing the echo of basketballs, arguments, and laughter bounce off concrete walls that amplified everything. The towers felt like cities stacked on top of each other. Each floor its own neighborhood, each hallway a street. You knew your neighbors by sound: the clatter of pots from 12B, the thump of bass from 15C, the arguments that spilled into corridors when walls were too thin to contain them. Living high up meant the world spread below like a patchwork quilt. But it also meant isolation when elevators broke and climbing 16 flights with grocery bags became routine. Older folks struggled, kids made it a race. By the 10th floor your legs burned. By the 16th you were gasping. Still, there was pride in those towers. They were ours. And they held us together. Welfare rules and broken families. Rent could cost 75% of monthly income, and welfare rules forbade able-bodied men from living in units, forcing fathers to live elsewhere or risk cutting off benefits that kept families fed. Mothers juggled jobs, sometimes 2 or 3 while raising children alone. Fathers visited only during the day, slipping in before dawn or after work, careful to leave before sundown when housing authority inspectors might knock. It was an open secret. Everyone knew whose father lived down the hall in another woman's apartment, just to keep the lights on in his real home. Kids understood early that survival required bending rules that were designed to break you. Older siblings became surrogate parents, bathing younger brothers and sisters in cramped bathrooms with rust-stained tubs, sharing beds when relatives visited, which was always 3 kids in a full-size mattress, feet and faces, blankets pulled tight. Families relied on government cheese, that thick orange block that melted beautifully, and food stamps that came in colorful booklets, each denomination a different shape. Kids helped carry groceries up flights of stairs, brown paper bags threatening to rip, cans of beans and jars of peanut butter weighing down small arms. They learned to stretch meals. Beans and rice could feed 8 people. Add some hot sauce, a little imagination, and it became dinner. Powdered milk never tasted quite right, but you got used to it. Government-issued peanut butter was thick enough to roof your mouth. Apartments were tight, packed with more people than rooms. Sleeping arrangements shifted constantly. Cousins on couches, grandmothers in recliner. Kids doubled up in beds, heads at opposite ends learning to sleep through snoring in midnight bathroom trips. Privacy was a luxury no one had. Conversations carried through walls. Arguments became public knowledge. Everyone knew everyone's business. And that meant if you needed help, help came. But it also meant if you messed up, everyone knew that too. Mothers worked 2 jobs, disappearing before dawn and returning bone-tired at night, feet swollen, backs aching. Older siblings stepped up, cooking dinners of fried bologna and instant potatoes, making sure homework got done, putting little ones to bed with made-up bedtime stories. Fathers came by when they could, slipping money into pockets and leaving before sunset. A $20 bill pressed into your palm. Don't tell your mama. But mama always knew. She just never said anything because that 20 meant the difference between lights on or off that week. It was survival by committee, every person carrying more than their share to keep the household afloat. Gangs, violence, and complicated protection. Gangs were present and violence was frequent, but the relationship between gangs and families was more complicated than outsiders understood. Gang leaders sometimes shielded families. Former Robert Taylor Homes residents recall gang members yelling, "Y'all go in the house," when shootings were about to erupt, giving mothers seconds to grab their children and run from playground. Kids learned to drop to the floor at the first pop of gunfire. They learned to stay away from windows, even on hot nights when the apartment felt like an oven. They learned which buildings were safe and which weren't. Despite the danger, gangs hosted back-to-school functions with free concerts and supplies. Some gang leaders insisted their members attend class and workouts, enforcing a twisted code that education mattered even if they themselves had dropped out. Parents kept living room couches pushed against walls to avoid stray bullets. A knock on the door at night meant a neighbor warning that trouble was brewing on the 5th floor or in the courtyard. The streets had rules you learned fast: when to run, where to hide, who to Gang members weren't just threats. Some were uncles, cousins, neighbors who grew up in the same buildings. They'd hand out backpacks in August, tell kids to stay in school, then turn around and defend their blocks with violence that left bodies on playgrounds. It was complicated. You respected them because they protected your building. You feared them because you'd seen what they could do. You accepted them because rejecting them wasn't an option. When they controlled the stairwells you had to climb every day, survival meant reading signal. A certain look exchanged between men at the bottom of the stairs. A sudden silence that fell over the courtyard. The way people moved faster, more purposeful when tension rose. When you felt that shift, you didn't wait for permission. You just went in, and you didn't come back out until someone's mother yelled the all clear from a balcony. Community volunteers and free meals. In projects like Robert Taylor Homes, community volunteers turned apartments into makeshift dining halls, where children received free breakfast and lunch when families couldn't afford food. Kids lined up in converted apartments, giggling as volunteers served pizza, pigs in a blanket and fruit cups on paper plates. After eating, they played games, did homework together, and were supervised by neighborhood mothers who kept them safe before sending them back outside to play. Field trips to parks and museums offered rare escapes. Kids rode yellow school buses, wide-eyed and excited, comparing who got to sit in the back. They returned clutching souvenir pencils, hats, or museum maps like trophies, proof they'd seen something beyond the concrete tower. The smell of scrambled eggs and syrup filled narrow hallways every morning. Breakfast wasn't just a meal, it was a guarantee, a place where hunger didn't follow you. Volunteers remembered every name. They asked about school, about your mama, about whether you'd finished your homework. They made sure seconds were available, that no child left hungry. After lunch came arts and crafts, coloring with crayons worn down to nubs, building towers from donated blocks, checkers tournaments where winners bragged for weeks, help with reading for kids who struggled, delivered with patience and encouragement. Mothers who didn't work outside the home ran these programs out of love and necessity, transforming tiny 2-bedroom apartments into sanctuaries where 20 kids could squeeze in and feel safe, fed, and cared for. Field trips were magic, escaping concrete for green parks where grass felt strange under your feet, touching museum exhibits you'd only seen in library books, riding buses that felt like adventures, watching the city change from your window, from projects to downtown to neighborhoods where houses had yards. Kids came home clutching free pencils like trophies, showing them off to siblings, proof they'd seen something beyond the project. Proof the world was bigger than 16 floors and walls. Playing outside, freedom within limits. Despite the hazards, children spent hours out. Robert Taylor residents remember playing on playgrounds all day, sharing bikes, joining Boy Scout troops, marching in the Bud Billiken Parade, and swimming in Washington Park's pool. The sounds of jump ropes slapping concrete filled courtyards. Double Dutch rhymes passed down through generations. Teddy bear, turn around, while girls synchronized their feet to perfection. Dominoes slammed on card tables, old men trash-talking while kids watched and learned. Checker games stretched for hours. Pieces, across boards drawn in chalk on concrete. Kids improvised fun from nothing, turning milk crates into basketball hoops. Roller skating through hallways when rain kept them inside. Riding handmade go-karts down steep ramps, often crashing spectacularly while friends cheered. Familiar scents marked the day. Fresh bread from the local bakery in the morning. Milk delivered in glass jugs, set outside apartment doors. Chlorine wafting from the public pool in summer. Outside was freedom. You left after breakfast and didn't come back until streetlights buzzed on, casting orange glows across courtyards. Your mama's voice would cut through the noise. Time to come in. And you knew you had 5 minutes, maybe 10 if you pushed it. Bikes were communal. Whoever had one shared it. You rode until someone else wanted a turn. Then you traded off. No fights, just understood rules. Jump rope tournaments drew crowds. Girls formed circles chanting rhymes while boys waited their turn to show off. Speed rounds, trick rounds, double unders that left everyone breathless. Homemade go-karts built from scrap wood and stolen shopping cart wheels raced down ramps at terrifying speeds. Crashes were inevitable and glorious. Kids tumbling, wheels spinning off, everyone laughing. Summer meant the public pool packed shoulder to shoulder with kids shrieking and splashing. You had to get there early to claim a spot. The water was freezing at first, then perfect. You stayed until your fingers pruned and lifeguards blew whistles for adult swim. The Bud Billiken Parade was the highlight of the year. Marching bands in full uniform, floats covered in crepe paper and balloons. The whole neighborhood turning out in their best clothes, lining the route, waving and cheering. Every day was an adventure you made yourself, because when you're a kid, imagination costs nothing. Neighbors as family, residents forged tight bonds and looked after one another. One Cabrini Green resident said there were foot races, dance contests, and candy factory handouts. Children never felt poor because the community provided acceptance and support. Neighbors yelled kids' names from balconies when dinner was ready. Michael, food's on the table. And if you were at Michael's house, his mama fed you too, no questions asked. Elders corrected misbehavior as if every child was their own. Curse in the courtyard, Miss Johnson from 8D would lean out her window and threaten to tell your mama, and she would. Older teens supervised little ones in playgrounds, breaking up fights before they escalated. They braided younger girls' hair on stoops, edges laid smooth, beads clicking at the ends of each braid. People shared sugar, milk, or cigarettes, without keeping score. You borrowed what you needed and returned it when you could. If you couldn't, no one held it against you because next week you might be the one with extra. Many kids recall free milk duds from a nearby candy factory. Workers handing out bags through chain-link fences to kids who lined up after school. Block party DJs plugged extension cords into lampposts, powering speakers that blasted music until midnight. Everyone knew each other's business, who was fighting, who lost their job, who was pregnant. But that knowledge came with responsibility. If someone needed help, help came. You didn't need blood to be family. Miss Johnson on the 5th floor fed you if you showed up at dinner time. Her fried chicken and greens tasted better than anything. Mr. Brown fixed your bike without asking for a dime, chain grease on his hands, telling you stories while he worked. If you cursed in the courtyard, any adult could discipline you, and would. A sharp look, a raised voice, sometimes a hand to the back of your head, and you took it because you knew they cared. Older kids babysat the younger ones without being asked, teaching them to tie shoes, dodge trouble, navigate the unspoken rules that kept you safe. Block parties materialized overnight. Someone dragged out speakers, extension cords snaked to streetlights, and the whole building danced. Ribs on the grill, coolers full of soda, music that made the ground vibrate.
Free candy from the factory felt like Christmas every week. Kids traded flavors. Pockets stuffed with chocolate. Privacy didn't exist, but neither did loneliness. Everybody knew your name, your mama's name, your grandmother's name, and that meant something. It meant when you walked through the courtyard, people spoke. When you fell, hands reached out. When you cried, someone asked why. Buildings falling apart, cheap construction and chronic underfunding led to mold, leaky pipes, collapsing ceilings, and infestation. Unoccupied buildings became drug dens. Parents placed pots and buckets under ceiling leaks, emptying them every few hours. They stuffed towels under doors to keep rats and roaches out. Though it rarely worked, the stench of mildew and sewage was constant. You stopped noticing after a while, but visitors smelled it immediately. That sour, damp odor that clung to clothes and hair. Children navigated dark stairwells with broken lights, feeling their way up, fingers trailing along graffiti-covered walls. Broken elevators meant everyone took the stairs, and on hot days, the stairwells smelled like piss and rot. Games included hopping over puddles of sewage pooling on landings, avoiding loose steps that could twist ankles, holding your breath past that one floor where it always smelled worse. Buckets, mops and space heaters were fixtures in living rooms, not for cleaning, but for survival. Catching water, drying out damp corners, keeping warm when heat broke in winter. Some kids remember seeing friends fall from unsecured windows or balconies, screens missed, railings rusted through. Parents warned constantly, stay away from that window. The buildings were falling apart faster than anyone could fix them. Ceilings sagged, brown water stains spreading like bruises. You learned to sleep around the leaks, moving your bed to avoid the drip 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 that kept you awake. Roaches scattered when you flipped on the kitchen light, disappearing into cracks you couldn't seal. Rats scurried in the walls at night, scratching sounds that became background noise. Stairwells reeked, light bulbs shattered or stolen, leaving you to climb in near darkness. You counted steps by feel, knew which landings had railings and which didn't. Elevators broke for weeks at a time. When they worked, you held your breath because getting stuck between floors meant waiting hours for maintenance that might never come. Abandoned units became shooting galleries and crack dens. Doors kicked in, squatters sleeping on bare floors. The smell of burnt metal and chemicals seeping into hallways. Kids played games to survive it. Don't step on that stair, jump over that puddle, hold your breath past that smell. It was dangerous, dirty and unfair, but it was home, and you made do. Food deserts and creative meals. Many projects had no nearby grocery stores. East Lake Meadows families lacked fresh produce and faced high unemployment and poverty rates exceeding. Mothers took buses across town for groceries, sometimes 2 buses each way, lugging bags through high-rise lobbies, while reminding kids to help carry the heavy stuff upstairs. Mealtime creativity was essential, stretching meals with rice, beans, and powdered milk that never quite tasted right. Kids grew tomatoes in buckets on balconies, tiny gardens that felt like victories when something actually grew. Government-issued cheese, bologna and powdered eggs were staples. Children recall trading school lunch desserts for fruit. An apple or orange felt like treasure when fresh food was rare at home. Fresh food was a luxury. The closest real grocery store was miles away, so mothers rode buses with toddlers in tow, hauling bags that cut into their fingers, milk gallons threatening to slip, bread squashed under canned goods. Kids carried what they could: canned beans, boxes of pasta, the precious gallon of milk that couldn't be dropped. You learned responsibility early. If you dropped the eggs, dinner changed. Dinner meant making magic out of nothing. Beans stretched with water became soup. Rice fried with leftover scraps became fried rice. Powdered milk that never tasted right got poured over cereal anyway because there was no other option. Government cheese melted beautifully though. Grilled cheese, mac and cheese, cheese on everything. That orange block was gold. Some families grew tomatoes or peppers in old buckets on windowsills. Tiny gardens that required patience kids didn't usually have, waiting weeks for a single tomato to ripen. But when it did, sliced and salted, it tasted like summer. At school, kids swapped desserts for apples or oranges, rare treats that felt like treasure. You'd trade your brownie for someone's orange, then eat it slowly, savoring every section, security guards in nightly fear. By the late 1980s, violence was so common in some projects that housing authorities hired guards with German Shepherd. Robberies and drug dealing were widespread. Kids saw guards patrolling with barking dogs and were told to be indoors by sundown. Sirens and police radios became nightly sounds, so constant you learned to sleep through them. Parents warned children about dealers in stairwell. Don't make eye contact. Don't stop to talk. If someone offers you something, run. Told them to avoid certain floors or buildings entirely. Don't go past the 9th floor. Stay out of buildings. Streetlights and security lights often failed, so residents used flashlights, candles, or the glow from TV sets to move around halls at night. Security guards walked the grounds with dogs that growled and lunged, meant to scare away trouble but scaring kids just as much. You learned to freeze when the dog looked at you, to keep your hands heisels, to move slow. Sirens became white noise. Every night, sometimes multiple times, police cars circled the lots, spotlights sweeping windows like prison searchlights. Parents gave strict instruction. Don't go to the 8th floor. Stay away from that building. If someone offers you something, run. Dealers posted up in stairwells, transactions happening in plain sight. You learn to look straight ahead, move fast, and mind your business. See nothing, say nothing. When the lights went out, and they often did, hallways turned pitch black. Families kept flashlights by the door, moved carefully, and listened hard. Footsteps behind you, voices ahead. You learned to identify sounds, to know which ones meant danger. Danger was always close, but you adapted. You had to. Joy in the midst of hardship. East Lake Meadows residents said, poverty wasn't the whole story. Families held birthday parties, and children played in water from opened fire hydrants, finding light in darkness. Summer memories include running through hydrant sprays in bare feet, squealing with joy, comparing who could stand under the cold blast the longest without flinching. Impromptu block parties sprang up when someone played a record. Kids danced, did the bump, and mimicked Soul Train moves under streetlights that attracted moths and mosquitoes. In cramped apartments, children used spoons as microphones and drummed on pots to songs like I'll Take You There, learned by ear because music lessons were unaffordable. Joy wasn't bought, it was created. Fire hydrants burst open on scorching days, water gushing into the street. Kids ran through screaming and laughing, clothes soaked, daring each other to stand in the strongest spray. Someone would drag out a radio, and suddenly there was a party. Dancing, singing, showing off moves copied from TV shows you watched through neighbors' windows. Inside, apartments became stages. Spoons turned into microphones, pots into drums, siblings into backup singers. You performed for an audience of one, your baby sister, but it felt like Madison Square Garden. Birthday cakes were simple, box mix, canned frosting, candles from the corner store. But those candles were blown out with the same excitement as anywhere else. Poverty shaped childhood, but it didn't steal it. Laughter was free, and so was imagination. Tough love, and street lessons. Growing up in dangerous environments, parents taught self-defense early. A former Pruitt-Igoe resident recalls his mother insisting he fight a gang leader so others would stop picking on him. Older brothers practiced punches on pillows, while parents explained that backing down could invite more trouble. You had to stand up, or you'd spend your whole childhood running. Spankings were common discipline. Sayings like, a hard head makes a soft behind underscored that misbehavior had chances you could feel. Switches cut from trees. You had to pick your own. Which was worse? Belts hanging on door hooks. Visible reminders on the words "Don't let me have to come get you" are often mentioned in reminiscences. Love was tough because the world outside was tougher. Mothers pushed sons to stand up and fight, not out of cruelty, but survival. Bullies didn't stop unless you made them. If you kept running, they'd chase you forever. Brothers taught you to throw a punch. Keep your chin down. Never show fear. If you cry, do it later where no one can see. Discipline was swift. A switch snapped from a tree branch, and you had to choose it yourself, knowing if you picked a small one, mama would get a bigger one. A belt pulled from a hook with that distinctive leather sound, or just the look, that look that made you freeze mid-sentence, mid-step, Mid-breath, phrases like, "I brought you into this world. I'll take you out" weren't jokes. Parents believed fear kept you alive, respect kept you safe. It hurt, but it also prepared you. The lessons were hard, but so was the neighborhood, and soft kids didn't survive long. Good Times and cultural validation. Television shows like Good Times portrayed a black family living in a Chicago project and tackled racism, unemployment, and racial pride. Residents watched because they finally saw their lives reflected. Families crowded around wood-paneled TVs with rabbit ear antennas, adjusting them until the picture cleared, to hear JJ yell "Dynamite" and debate which character they related to most. Kids reenacted episodes in hallways, quoting wisecracks and singing the theme song, "Keeping your head above water, making a wave when you can." Parents compared the fictional Evans family to real life, seeing themselves in Florida's strength and James's struggles. Radios on windowsills blasted Marvin Gaye, the Staple Singers, and James Brown. Music flowed through concrete walls and kept spirits high. Seeing Good Times felt like validation, proof that your life mattered enough to be on TV. Everyone had a favorite character. JJ made you laugh with his paintings and schemes. Florida made you cry with her strength. James showed you what a father should be. Thelma was cool. Michael was smart. Kids recited lines word for word in the hallways, pretending they lived in apartment 17C2. Music was the other lifeline. Radios perched on windowsills played non-stop. Marvin asking, "What's going on?" Aretha demanding respect. James screaming he felt good. The music traveled through walls, linked apartments, turned the whole building into one big stereo. It gave you pride, rhythm, identity. It reminded you that you were part of something bigger. Block parties and community celebrations. Projects had vibrant social calendars, foot races, dance competitions, and parades like Chicago's Bud Billiken kept spirits high. Residents closed off streets, set up picnic tables and grilled ribs and hot dogs, while DJs used extension cords to power speakers. Lampposts. Kids competed in double Dutch tournaments and talent shows. Winners proudly wore paper crowns or homemade trophies. Ribbons made from construction paper that meant everything. Floats for neighborhood parades were decorated with crepe paper and balloon. Even those who couldn't afford costumes still marched and cheered, dressed in their best church clothes. Block parties were the highlight of summer. Streets shut down, grills fired up. The smell of barbecue filled the air. Ribs, hot dogs, chicken legs charred perfectly. Extension cords snaked from apartment windows to lamp posts, powering massive speakers that blasted music until midnight. You could hear it from 10 blocks away. Kids showed off in double Dutch tournaments, ropes slapping pavement in perfect rhythm, feet moving so fast they blurred. Talent shows turned shy kids into stars, singing into hairbrush microphones. Dancing routines practiced for weeks. Winners wore crowns made from construction paper like they'd won Grammys. The Bud Billiken parade was sacred, floats covered in crepe paper, marching bands with drummers keeping perfect time. Everyone dressed their best. Pressed shirts, polished shoes, hair freshly done. Even if you had no costume, you marched anyway, waving, smiling, being part of something that felt important. These events weren't distractions from hardship. They were proof that joy could thrive anywhere. Demolition and displacement. By the 1980s through 1990s, policies like Chicago's Plan for Transformation aimed to demolish high-rise projects. 23 towers in Cabrini Green alone housed nearly 15,000 residents, and replaced them with mixed-income housing, displacing longtime families packed belongings into cardboard boxes, and watched wrecking balls smash the homes where generations had grown up. Children bussed to unfamiliar suburbs, missed their old friends and felt lost amid manicured lawns and strict homeowners association rule. Former residents mourned the erasure of their culture and community as luxury condos rose where their basketball courts and playgrounds once stood. Demolition felt like betrayal. Families who'd lived there for decades were handed vouchers and told to leave. You watched bulldozers tear down the building where you were born, where your grandmother died, where your best friend lived. They called it transformation, but it felt like erasure. Kids were bused to suburbs with rules they didn't understand. No playing outside past dark. No music too loud. No sitting on front steps. No loud talking. Everything was clean, quiet, lonely. They missed the noise, the crowds, the familiarity, knowing everyone's name, hearing music through walls. Now luxury condos stand where playgrounds used to be, Target stores where buildings stood, coffee shops where corner stores were. The new residents have no idea what came before, the culture, the community, the memories, all paved over like they never existed.
The real legacy, resilience. Despite poverty, residents insisted poverty, crime and drugs weren't the complete experience. They found light and happiness in community bonds. Neighbors drove each other to work when buses ran late, organized rent strikes when landlords ignored broken boilers, created businesses out of nothing, selling hair braids, home-cooked plates, fixing cars in parking lots. Kids learned to sew, cook and fix bikes from elders who passed down skills worth more than money. They decorated apartments with hand-painted murals and crocheted curtains, turned concrete into canvas, made beauty out of nothing. The projects fostered a spirit of endurance and pride. People made a way out of nowhere, and still remember laughter outweighing hardship. The story of the projects isn't just struggle, it's survival with dignity. Neighbors carpooled to jobs, shared childcare, organized when the city ignored them. When the boilers broke in winter, families brought space heaters to elderly neighbors. When someone lost a job, others shared what they had. Entrepreneurs sold everything from hair braids to home-cooked plates out of their apartments, turning living rooms into salons and kitchens into restaurants. Elders taught skills, how to hem pants, fry chicken, patch tires, change oil. Knowledge that kept you employed, fed, independent. Apartments became canvases. Hand-painted murals of Black Jesus and Martin Luther King, crocheted doilies on every surface, family photos covering every wall, proof that you existed, that your family mattered. People made beauty out of nothing. Yes, there was poverty. Yes, there was danger. But there was also laughter that echoed through stairwells. Birthday parties with 30 people squeezed into a 2-bedroom apartment, and a belief that tomorrow could be better. That resilience, that refusal to be broken, that's the real legacy. Not the buildings that fell, but the people who rose.